The sound of the slap cracked through the first-class cabin like a gunshot. It wasn't just a hit. It was a declaration of war. Tiffany, the senior flight attendant, stood with her hand trembling, looking down at the young man in the hoodie she had just humiliated. She thought she had put a thug in his place. She thought her badge gave her the power of a god at 30,000 feet. But she didn't know who was sitting in seat 1A. She didn't know that the man holding his stinging cheek was Dante Sterling. And she definitely didn't know that with one phone call he wasn't just going to end her career, he was going to ground the entire plane. The early morning sun glared off the tarmac at JFK International Airport, casting long, sharp shadows across the fuselage of Vanguard Airlines Flight 402 bound for London. Inside the cabin, the air was stale, smelling faintly of recycled coffee and sanitizer. Tiffany Gould adjusted her silk scarf in the galley mirror, checking her reflection for the third time. She was the lead flight attendant on this route, a position she wore like a crown. At 34, Tiffany had cultivated an image of icy perfection. Her uniform was tailored a little tighter than regulation, her lipstick a shade redder. She believed the first-class cabin was her personal kingdom, and she was the queen who decided who was worthy of comfort and who was merely tolerating her presence. "Check the manifest again, Sarah." Tiffany snapped at her junior colleague, a timid girl with frizzy hair who looked like she hadn't slept in 2 days. "We have a VIP list today. I don't want any screw-ups. And keep the economy riffraff from using the forward lavatory. I'm not in the mood to deal with peasants today." Sarah nodded quickly, clutching the clipboard. "Yes, Tiffany. We have a few high-status passengers, a senator, the CFO of Tech Global, and, a Mr. Sterling in 1A. Tiffany rolled her eyes. Sterling, never heard of him. Probably some new money crypto kid spending his daddy's inheritance. Just make sure the champagne is chilled. Boarding began. The usual parade of suits and designer handbags filed in. Tiffany greeted the senator with a plastic, dazzling smile, taking his coat with a flourish. She fawned over the CFO, making sure his pre-departure scotch was poured exactly to the rim. Then he walked in. He was tall with broad shoulders that seemed to fill the narrow entryway. His skin was a deep, rich mahogany, glowing under the cabin lights. But it wasn't his striking features that caught Tiffany's eye, it was his clothes. He wore a faded, charcoal grey, oversized hoodie distressed jeans that looked like they had seen better days, and a pair of beat-up sneakers. He had a pair of large headphones around his neck, and carried a battered leather duffel bag. He stopped at the entrance of first class, glancing at his boarding pass. Tiffany stepped directly in his path, her smile vanishing instantly. She crossed her arms, her manicured nails digging into her biceps. "Excuse me," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Economy boarding is through the second door past the galley. You need to keep moving. You're holding up the line." The young man looked up, his eyes calm and honey brown. He didn't flinch at her tone. "I know. I'm in seat 1A. Tiffany let out a short, sharp laugh, loud enough for the senator in 2B to look up over his newspaper. 1A? Honey, 1A is a $3,000 seat. I think you're confused. Let me see your ticket." She snatched the phone from his hand before he could offer it. She stared at the screen, hoping to find a forgery, a mistake, anything. The screen clearly read, Dante Sterling. Seat 1A, first class. Status Emerald Elite. Tiffany's jaw tightened. A glitch. It had to be a system error. Or maybe he used stolen miles. She thrust the phone back at him, almost dropping it. "Fine," she hissed, leaning in so only he could hear. "But I've got my eye on you. Don't think because you scammed a ticket you get to act like you own the place. Sit down, shut up, and don't disturb the real passengers." Dante Sterling didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He just looked at her for a second too long, a strange, unreadable expression on his face, like a scientist observing a particularly fascinating insect. "Understood," Dante said softly. He moved past her, his shoulder brushing the edge of the galley wall. As he settled into the plush leather seat of 1A, he pulled a book out of his bag. It wasn't a magazine or a tablet. It was a hardcover copy of The Art of War. Tiffany watched him from the galley, fuming. She hated him instantly. She hated his calmness. She hated that he didn't cower. In her mind, the first-class cabin was a sanctuary for the elite, and his presence was a stain on her perfect flight. She decided then and there that she would make the next 7 hours of his life a living hell. "Sarah," Tiffany whispered, grabbing the junior attendant's arm. "No pre-departure drink for 1A. If he asks, tell him we're out of stock until we hit cruising altitude. Let's see how long he lasts." The flight took off smoothly, climbing through the cloud layer over the Atlantic. The seatbelt sign pinged off. This was usually Tiffany's favorite time, the time to schmooze with the wealthy passengers, perhaps fish for a tip or a business card that could lead to a better job. She moved through the cabin with a bottle of Dom Perignon, topping off the senator's glass. "Excellent service as always, Tiffany," the senator beamed. "Only the best for you, Senator," she purred. She moved to 1A. Dante had his tray table down and was writing in a leather-bound notebook. He hadn't asked for anything, despite being ignored during the pre-flight service. Tiffany stood over him holding the bottle, but not pouring. "Ticket check," she said loudly. Dante paused his writing. He looked up, removing his headphones. "I showed you my ticket at the door." "I need to verify it again," Tiffany lied smoothly. "We've had some security concerns regarding fraudulent credit card purchases. Standard procedure." Across the aisle, a woman in a Chanel suit whispered to her husband, "Is he trouble? He looks like trouble." Dante sighed, reaching into his pocket for his phone. "Here." Tiffany didn't look at the phone. She looked at the notebook. "What are you writing? Are you rating the crew?" "I'm working," Dante said, his voice tightening slightly. "Is there a problem, Miss—" He glanced at her name tag. "Tiffany." "The problem," Tiffany snapped, abandoning the pretense of politeness, "is that your bag is sticking out too far. It's a tripping hazard." Dante looked down. His bag was completely shoved under the seat in front of him. It wasn't sticking out a millimeter. "It's under the seat. I say it's a hazard," Tiffany said, her voice rising. "Move it to the overhead bin, now." "The bin is full," Dante pointed out calmly. "You filled it with the senator's coat and your own luggage." "Are you refusing a crew member's instruction?" Tiffany's eyes widened. She was baiting him. She wanted him to snap. She wanted a reason to have the air marshal drag him back to economy, or better yet, off the plane at the next stop. "I'm saying there is nowhere to put it," Dante said firmly, "and I would appreciate it if you would stop harassing me and let me work. I haven't asked you for anything." "Harassing you?" Tiffany gasped, clutching her pearls dramatically. She turned to the cabin, addressing the other passengers. "Did you hear that I am trying to ensure the safety of this flight, and this man is accusing me of harassment?" The senator cleared his throat. "Young man, just do as she says. Don't cause a scene." Dante closed his notebook. The air around him seemed to change. The casual vibe evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp authority. He stood up. He was significantly taller than Tiffany, and for the first time, she felt a flicker of intimidation. "I need to speak to the purser," Dante said, "or the captain." "I am the lead flight attendant," Tiffany spat, stepping into his personal space. "You deal with me. Now sit down before I have you restrained." "I'm not sitting down until I get your employee ID number and a formal apology," Dante said, his voice dropping an octave. "You have profiled me since I walked on this plane. You denied me service, and now you are fabricating safety violations." Tiffany's face went red. She wasn't used to pushback. She was used to fear. She saw the other passengers watching. She felt her control slipping. She needed to assert dominance. Instinct took over, a nasty, violent instinct born of years of unchecked entitlement. "You listen to me, you little punk," she hissed, pointing a finger in his face. "You don't belong here. I don't care who you stole that credit card from. You are garbage." Dante didn't blink. He calmly raised his hand to move her finger away from his face. "Do not point at me." It was a gentle motion, defensive, barely a touch. But Tiffany saw her opening. "Don't you touch me!" she shrieked, and then she swung. Smack! Her open palm connected with Dante's cheek with a sickening, wet slap. The sound echoed in the pressurized silence of the cabin. Dante's head whipped to the side. The entire first-class cabin gasped in unison. Even the senator dropped his glass. Time seemed to freeze. Dante stood there, his cheek rapidly turning red. He slowly turned his head back to face her. There was no anger in his eyes anymore. Just a profound, terrifying disappointment. Tiffany stood, panting, her hand stinging. For a second, she felt a rush of power. Then she saw the look on his face. Dante didn't yell. He didn't strike back. He simply reached into his pocket, pulled out a sleek, black satellite phone, a device that looked far more expensive than anything else he was wearing, and dialed a number. "You can't use phones," Tiffany screamed, her voice cracking. "That's a violation. Put it away." Dante ignored her. He held the phone to his ear, his eyes locked on hers. "Hello, Charles," Dante said into the phone, his voice calm, deadly, and precise. "It's Dante. Code Red. Authorization Alpha 9 Zulu. Yes. I'm on Vanguard 402. No, I'm fine, physically. But we have a situation. Yes. Do it. Ground the plane." He hung up. Tiffany laughed nervously. "Ground the plane? Who do you think you are? You think calling your boyfriend is going to stop a Boeing 777. Dante sat back down, buckled his seatbelt, and opened his book again. "I suggest you strap in, Tiffany," Dante said, without looking up. "We're going to be descending very shortly." Tiffany opened her mouth to mock him again. But before she could speak, the cabin lights flickered. The plane banked sharply to the left. The engines roared as the thrust changed. The PA system crackled to life. It was the captain, and his voice was shaking. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Miller speaking. We have received an emergency order from Air Traffic Control and Vanguard Corporate Command. We are being ordered to divert immediately to Boston Logan International. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. Flight attendants, prepare for immediate landing." Tiffany's face went pale. She looked at the intercom speaker, then back at Dante. Dante turned a page in his book. "Like I said," he murmured. "Strap in." The cabin of Flight 402 was no longer a sanctuary of luxury. It was a pressure cooker of confusion and rising panic. The sudden bank of the aircraft had spilled drinks and rattled nerves. The drone of the engines changed pitch, a deep guttural roar, as the air brakes deployed, slowing the massive bird down far earlier than scheduled. Tiffany Gould gripped the counter in the galley, her knuckles white. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but not from fear of the landing, from the adrenaline of the confrontation. She stared through the curtain gap at seat 1A. Dante Sterling sat motionless. His seatbelt fastened his eyes, scanning the pages of his book as if he were sitting in a library, not on a plane, making an emergency diversion. "He did something," Tiffany whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and validation. She turned to Sarah, who was cowering near the coffee maker, looking pale. "Did you see that he made a call and the plane turned? He's a hacker, or a terrorist. I knew it." I knew he didn't belong here. Sarah swallowed hard, clutching a safety card. Tiffany, maybe we should just leave him alone. The captain said it was corporate command. Exactly. Tiffany snapped her eyes wild. He probably hacked the corporate frequency. That phone, it wasn't a normal iPhone. It was military grade. Sarah, we are heroes. We identified a threat. When we land, the feds are going to swarm this plane, and they are going to thank me. She pulled a fresh incident report form from the metal drawer and uncapped her pen. She began to write furiously, her handwriting jagged. Subject in 1A, disruptive behavior, refused crew instructions, verbal assault, physical intimidation, suspected interference with flight avionics. She paused, then added, subject reached for crew member necessitating defensive maneuvering. She looked at the lie written in blue ink. It was her insurance policy. If she claimed self-defense, the slap wasn't assault, it was bravery. She was protecting the flight deck. She was protecting the passengers. She convinced herself of this narrative with terrifying speed. In Tiffany's world, she was never the villain. She was the guardian of standards. Over the intercom, Captain Miller's voice returned tighter this time. Cabin crew, prepare for immediate arrival. We have been cleared for a priority landing on runway 4 right. We will not be going to a gate. Stairs will be brought to the aircraft on the tarmac. Please ensure all passengers remain seated until authorities board. Authorities? Tiffany breathed a smirk, curling her lips. She smoothed her skirt, checking her reflection in the metal coffee pot. Got you. She marched out into the aisle, ignoring the seatbelt sign. She needed to control the narrative before the doors opened. She leaned over to Senator Holloway in 2B. Senator, she whispered conspiratorially, I am so sorry for this diversion. The individual in 1A has made threats against the aircraft. The police are meeting us to remove him. Please, for your safety, do not make eye contact with him. The senator, a man who had made a career out of avoiding conflict, looked from Tiffany to Dante. Dante hadn't moved. He didn't look like a threat. He looked bored. But the senator nodded slowly. Understood. Good work, Tiffany. Tiffany felt a surge of triumph. She walked past 1A, deliberately bumping Dante's shoulder with her hip. Enjoy your book while you can, she hissed. Gitmo doesn't have a library. Dante didn't look up. He simply turned another page. The Art of War, Chapter 3, he said softly, his voice barely audible over the engine noise. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. You should read it sometime, Tiffany. You might learn why you've already lost. We'll see who loses when the handcuffs go on, she sneered, retreating to her jump seat as the landing gear thudded down. The landing was hard. The pilot slammed the bird onto the tarmac, reversing thrusters immediately. Passengers lurched forward against their belts. The plane taxied fast, bypassing the terminal completely. It rolled toward a secluded section of the airfield, an area usually reserved for cargo or diplomatic flights. Through the porthole window in the galley, Tiffany saw them. Flashing blue and red lights cut through the grey morning mist. It wasn't just one police car. It was a fleet. 3 Massachusetts State Police cruisers, 2 black armored SUVs with tinted windows, and a sleek silver Rolls-Royce Phantom that looked entirely out of place on an airport tarmac. Look at that response, Tiffany gloated to Sarah, pointing out the window. They brought the SWAT team. I told you he was big trouble. Sarah peered out, her brow furrowed. Tiffany, police cars don't usually park next to a Rolls-Royce, and those SUVs, those aren't police, Homeland Security. Tiffany dismissed. Or CIA, it doesn't matter. They're here for him. The plane came to a halt. The engines whined down. Almost immediately, a mobile stairway truck pulled up to the forward door. Disarm doors and cross-check. Tiffany commanded, her voice ringing with authority. She waited for the knock on the fuselage. Thump, thump. Tiffany took a deep breath, put on her most professional victim-hero face, and rotated the handle. She pushed the heavy door open. The cold Boston air rushed in, smelling of jet fuel and ozone. At the bottom of the stairs, a group of men stood waiting. 2 uniformed state troopers stood at attention, but they weren't the ones in charge. In front of them stood 4 men in immaculate black suits wearing earpieces, and in front of them stood a man who looked like he had stepped out of a magazine cover for Most Dangerous Lawyers in America. He was older, perhaps 60, with silver hair slicked back, and a pinstripe suit that cost more than Tiffany's annual salary. He held a briefcase in one hand and checked a gold pocket watch with the other. Tiffany stepped onto the platform at the top of the stairs, blocking the way. She raised her hand, signaling them to stop. "Officers," she called out, projecting her voice so the first-class cabin could hear. "The suspect is in seat 1A. He is violent and refuses to follow instructions. I have confiscated his weapon. I mean his phone. I was forced to subdue him physically for the safety of the flight." She waited for them to rush up the stairs, guns drawn to drag the thug away. But nobody moved. The silver-haired man at the bottom of the stairs looked up at her. He adjusted his glasses, squinting slightly. He didn't look concerned about a terrorist. He looked annoyed. "Who are you?" the man asked, his voice crisp and British. "I am the lead flight attendant, Tiffany Gould," she announced. "I am the one who called in the report." "You didn't call in anything," the man interrupted. "We received a code red from the principal via secure satellite link." He turned to the man beside him. "Get her out of the way." Before Tiffany could process this, 2 of the men in black suits bounded up the stairs with terrifying speed. They didn't draw weapons, but their movement was fluid and aggressive. "Ma'am, step aside," the first suit said. It wasn't a request. "But he's inside," Tiffany stammered, pointing back at Dante. "I'm trying to help you." The agent gently but firmly grabbed her arm and moved her physically from the doorway to the galley wall, pinning her there with a look that froze her blood. "Stay here. Do not speak." The silver-haired man walked up the stairs, his pace leisurely. He stepped onto the plane, ignoring Tiffany completely. He scanned the cabin. The passengers were silent. Senator Holloway was craning his neck. The man walked straight to seat 1A. Dante Sterling was closing his book. He placed it into his bag, picked up his headphones, and stood up. The silver-haired man bowed. It wasn't a nod. It was a formal, deep bow from the waist. "Mr. Sterling," the man said, "I apologize for the delay in extraction. The traffic in the tunnel was dreadful." Dante smiled, a genuine, tired smile. "Hello, Charles. I see you brought the cavalry. Your father insisted," Charles said, gesturing to the Rolls-Royce on the tarmac. "He was displeased when he received your distress signal. He is on the video conference in the car." Tiffany's mouth fell open. The Charles Dante had called wasn't a gang leader or a hacker friend. He was a butler or a consigliere. "Distress signal." Tiffany squawked, unable to help herself. She tried to step forward, but the security agent blocked her path. "He wasn't in distress. He was the aggressor. He assaulted me." Charles turned slowly to face her. His expression was one of mild distaste, as if he had stepped in something unpleasant. "Assaulted you?" Charles asked calmly. He looked at Dante. "Sir," Dante sighed. He reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen and held it up. "I started recording audio when she refused to let me board," Dante said. "And I switched to video when she threatened to have me arrested for reading." He pressed play. The video was clear. It showed Dante sitting calmly. It showed Tiffany screaming, pointing her finger in his face. And then, in high-definition 4K clarity, it showed Tiffany drawing her hand back and slapping him across the face. The sound of the slap on the video was even louder than in real life. Smack. "Don't you touch me!" The video, Tiffany screamed after she had already hit him. The silence in the cabin was deafening. Charles watched the video, his face darkening. The polite British demeanor vanished, replaced by something cold and predatory. He looked at the red handprint that was still faintly visible on Dante's cheek. "I see," Charles said softly. "Battery. Unprovoked assault. False imprisonment. Defamation." He turned to the state troopers who had just reached the top of the stairs. "Officers, I believe you have probable cause to make an arrest. The evidence is right here." Tiffany smirked nervously. "Exactly, arrest him." The state trooper looked at the video on the phone, then looked at Tiffany. He reached for his belt. "Ma'am," the trooper said, walking toward Tiffany, "turn around and place your hands behind your back." Tiffany froze. "What? Know him, arrest him." "Do you know who I am?" "You are under arrest for assault and battery," the trooper said, spinning her around and clicking the handcuffs onto her wrists. The metal felt cold and tight, biting into her skin. "This is a mistake," Tiffany shrieked, struggling as they marched her toward the door. "He's nobody. He's just some kid in a hoodie. I'm the victim. Senator, tell them." Senator Holloway looked down at his shoes, suddenly finding the carpet pattern fascinating. Dante picked up his duffel bag. He stopped in front of Tiffany as the officers held her by the door. "You asked if I knew who I was," Dante said, his voice level. "My name is Dante Sterling. My father is William Sterling." Tiffany stopped struggling. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a corpse. William Sterling, the billionaire venture capitalist, the man who had just acquired a 60% controlling stake in Vanguard Airlines 3 weeks ago. "You," she whispered. "You own the airline." "Technically," Dante corrected. "My father owns the airline. I just sit on the board of directors for customer experience and standards." He leaned in closer. "And Tiffany, you just failed the inspection." The realization hit Tiffany like a physical blow, harder than the slap she had delivered. She wasn't just fired. She had assaulted the son of the man who signed her paychecks. But denial is a powerful drug, and Tiffany was overdosing on it. "No," she stammered, as the troopers pushed her onto the metal stairs. "No, this is a prank. You can't be him. Mr. Sterling he's older. He wears suits. You look like a regular person." Dante finished for her, stepping out onto the stairs, the wind whipping his hoodie. "That's the problem, Tiffany. You treat people based on what you think they're worth. You saw a hoodie and saw trash. You saw a senator and saw power. You're not just a bad flight attendant. You're a liability." The scene on the tarmac was a spectacle. Ground crews, baggage handlers, and other pilots had stopped to watch. It wasn't every day a flight attendant was marched down the stairs in handcuffs while a passenger was escorted to a Rolls-Royce. As Dante reached the bottom of the stairs, the second black SUV opened its doors. A woman in a sharp navy pantsuit stepped out. She held a tablet and looked terrified. It was Mrs. Gable, the regional director of in-flight services for Vanguard Airlines, Tiffany's boss's boss. She ran over to Dante, her heels clicking frantically on the pavement. "Mr. Sterling, Mr. Sterling, I am so horrified," she gasped, looking at the red mark on his face. "We had no idea you were flying today. If we had known, we would have—" "You would have what?" Dante asked, stopping. "Treated me with basic human dignity. Is that a premium feature? Now, Mrs. Gable, does that cost extra miles?" Mrs. Gable flushed red. "No, sir, of course not. I mean, we would have ensured the crew was—" "Better," Dante suggested. "This isn't about me, Mrs. Gable. If I were actually just a college kid from Brooklyn, that woman would have had me arrested in London." She would have ruined my life because she didn't like my sneakers. How many other people has she done this to? How many complaints have you ignored because she manages the VIPs? Well, Mrs. Gable looked at Tiffany, who was being shoved into the back of a state police cruiser. I will pull her file immediately, sir. Do that, Dante said. And while you're at it, ground this plane. Mrs. Gable blinked. Sir, the plane. But there are other passengers. The senator. The plane is a crime scene, Charles interjected smoothly. We need to preserve the evidence, the cockpit voice recorder, the cabin surveillance logs and witness statements from every passenger. Mr. Sterling intends to press full charges, civil and criminal. Charles opened the back door of the Rolls-Royce. Inside the interior was cream leather. A large screen was mounted on the back of the front seat, showing the face of an older man with the same eyes as Dante, but with a jaw set in granite. William Sterling. "Get in, son!" The voice from the screen boomed. It was amplified, echoing slightly on the tarmac. Dante tossed his bag onto the floorboard. He looked back at the plane one last time. He saw Sarah, the junior flight attendant, standing at the top of the stairs crying. Dante paused. "Charles." "Yes, sir." "The other flight attendant. Sarah. She tried to stop it. She was scared." Charles made a note on a small pad. "I will see to it that she is not swept up in the termination. Perhaps a transfer to the Royal Class Fleet." "And a raise," Dante added. "She has to deal with Tiffany. She deserves hazard pay." Dante slid into the car. Charles closed the door with a solid thump, shutting out the noise of the airport. As the Rolls-Royce began to pull away, flanked by the black security SUVs, Tiffany watched from the window of the police cruiser. She banged on the glass. "He's lying! He's lying!" She screamed, her breath fogging the window. "I'm the victim! I'm the victim!" But nobody was listening. The trooper in the front seat simply turned up the radio. Inside the Rolls-Royce, the silence was heavy. Dante put on a headset to speak to his father on the screen. "Are you hurt?" William Sterling asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Just a sting. Ego hurts more," Dante admitted. "I tried to handle it quietly, Dad. I really did. I just wanted to read my book." "I know," William said. "But you exposed a rot in the company. I just got off the phone with the board. They are panicking. Vanguard stock dropped 2% just on the rumor of a diversion. When the video of a staff member slapping a passenger comes out, it's going to be a bloodbath." "I don't want to destroy the airline, Dad," Dante said, watching the Boston skyline pass by. "I just want her gone, and I want the culture fixed." "Oh, she's gone," William said dryly. "But that's not enough. You know the rule, Dante. If someone strikes a Sterling, we don't just hit back. We dismantle the ground they stand on." Charles turned from the front passenger seat. "Sir, we have a situation regarding the video. Several passengers recorded the incident on their phones as well. It's already hitting social media. #flight attendant slap is trending on Twitter." Dante pulled out his phone. He opened the app. There it was, a shaky video from row 2. It showed Tiffany screaming, "You are garbage," and then the slap. The caption read, "WTF Vanguard Airlines flight attendant just assaulted a kid in first class. #boycott Vanguard. #crazy Karen." It had 50,000 views and was climbing by the second. "Good," Dante said, leaning back. "Let it burn." "There is one other thing," Charles said, looking at his tablet. "The legal team for the airline, your father's employees, are technically required to defend the employee until gross misconduct is proven. But Tiffany has apparently already called a lawyer, a man named Saul Goodman type, a strip mall injury lawyer. She's going to sue us." Dante laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "She's going to sue us for what? Emotional distress, wrongful termination. She claims you provoked her with threatening behavior, and that she has witnesses. She has the senator, Dante realized. Senator Holloway. She spent the whole flight buttering him up. If he testifies that I was aggressive, Senator Holloway is up for re-election in 3 months. William's voice crackled from the screen. He needs donor money. He won't side with a flight attendant over the sterlings. Don't be so sure, Dante said. He looked pretty annoyed that his flight was grounded, and Tiffany told him I was a terrorist. If he goes on CNN and says I caused a security threat to cover his own confusion, the narrative gets messy. Charles tapped the divider. Sir, we are approaching the Sterling Boston headquarters. We have a war room set up. Dante looked at his reflection in the darkened window. The red handprint was fading, but the anger was settling into something colder, more calculated. Charles, Dante said, find out everything about Tiffany Gould. High school grades, previous employers, parking tickets, deleted tweets, everything. If she wants to play the victim, I want to know exactly who the villain is. Already begun, sir, Charles replied. But you should know. She's not backing down. She just posted a selfie from the back of the police car. Dante checked his phone again. There, on Tiffany's Instagram story, was a picture of her tear-stained face, handcuffed hands held up. The caption attacked by a violent passenger. Police arresting me because he's rich. The 1% think they can own us. I won't be silenced. #Justice for Tiffany. She's playing the class war card, Dante muttered. Smart. She knows people hate billionaires. She picked the wrong billionaire, William said. Charles. Dante said, get the legal team ready, and get the PR team. I'm not just going to sue her. I'm going to make sure the whole world sees the unedited tape. We're going to live stream the truth. The car pulled into the underground garage of a glass skyscraper. The doors opened, and Dante stepped out, not as the boy in the hoodie, but as the heir to an empire preparing for battle. The slap was just the opening shot. The war had just begun. 48 hours later, the world was on fire. Tiffany Gould sat in the makeup chair of The Morning View, the country's most popular daytime talk show. She looked nothing like the polished tyrant of Flight 402. Today she was dressed in a soft pastel cardigan that was slightly too big for her, making her look fragile. Her hair was down loose and modest. She wasn't wearing her signature red lipstick. Instead, she wore a pale gloss that made her look innocent, almost childlike. Beside her sat her lawyer, Barry the Bulldog Higgins, a man whose billboards littered the highways of New Jersey, promising cash for your crash. He wore a suit that was too shiny and smelled faintly of desperation and Old Spice. I was just doing my job, Tiffany said to the camera, wiping away a rehearsed tear. He was acting erratic. He was writing in a book about war. He refused to follow safety protocols. When I tried to gently guide him, he got in my face. I felt threatened. As a woman, alone in that cabin, I reacted. And now I'm being sued by the richest family in America, just for protecting myself. The host, a sympathetic woman named Linda, nodded gravely. And you were arrested. Tiffany handcuffed like a criminal, thrown in a cell. Tiffany sobbed, while he drove away in a Rolls-Royce. It's not right. Just because his daddy owns the airline doesn't mean he owns me. The audience applauded. Twitter was exploding. The hashtag Justice for Tiffany was trending higher than the President's State of the Union address. A GoFundMe for her legal defense had already raised $50,000. High above the city, in the penthouse boardroom of Sterling Enterprises, Dante watched the broadcast on a massive wall of screens. The room was dark, lit only by the blue glow of data streams. She's good, Dante admitted, spinning a pen in his fingers. I almost believe her. She is utilizing a classic David versus Goliath strategy, Charles said from the head of the table. She is banking on the public's inherent distrust of wealth. She knows the video shows the slap, but she is contextualizing it as self-defense against an aggressive male. William Sterling sat at the end of the table, his face like a thundercloud. She's slandering the family name. She's dragging Vanguard's stock price into the gutter. We need to end this, Dante. Now. Not yet, Dante said calmly. If we crush her now, we look like bullies. We prove her point. We need her to overextend. We need her to lie so big that when the truth comes out, there's no place left for her to hide. We have the Senator Charles noted sliding a folder across the obsidian table. Dante opened it. Inside were photos of Senator Holloway accepting a very expensive bottle of scotch from a lobbyist who happened to work for a rival airline. It wasn't illegal technically, but it was ugly. I spoke to the senator this morning, Charles said, with a shark-like grin. I reminded him that Sterling Enterprises is the largest donor to his party's super PAC. I also mentioned that we have the unedited cabin audio, where he clearly agrees with you that Tiffany was being unreasonable before the slap. And suddenly, the senator's memory has improved. He is willing to issue a statement clarifying that you were, in fact, reading quietly. Hold him, Dante said. Don't release the statement yet. Let Tiffany dig the hole deeper. What about her background? You said you found something? Charles tapped his tablet, and a new image appeared on the main screen. It was a scanned document from a regional airline that had gone bankrupt 5 years ago. Tiffany Gould didn't just leave her last job, Charles explained. She was fired. Quietly. Non-disclosure agreement attached, for what extortion Charles said. She accused a pilot of harassment after he refused to date her. She threatened to go public unless they paid her a settlement. The airline paid her $50,000 to go away because they couldn't afford the scandal. Dante's eyes narrowed. She's a predator. She uses victimhood as a weapon. Precisely, Charles said. And we managed to track down the pilot. He's retired now, living in Florida. He hates her. And since the airline no longer exists, his NDA is void. He's willing to talk. Dante stood up, walking to the window overlooking the city. She thinks this is a media war. She thinks if she gets enough likes on Instagram, the truth doesn't matter. He turned back to the room, his face hard. Set up a deposition, Dante commanded. Bring her in. Put her under oath. Let her lie on the official record. And then we drop the hammer. The conference room at the law firm of Sterling Vance and Associates was designed to intimidate. The walls were glass, the table was marble, and the air conditioning was set to a chilling 65 degrees. Tiffany walked in like she was walking onto a red carpet. She wore a white suit today, symbolizing purity, and held her head high. Her lawyer Higgins was sweating profusely, looking around at the army of paralegals lining the walls. Dante sat opposite them. He wasn't wearing a hoodie today. He wore a bespoke charcoal suit that cost more than Higgins's car. He didn't look like a victim. He looked like an executioner. This is a waste of time, Tiffany scoffed, throwing her purse on the table. You can't scare me. I have the people on my side. Just cut me a check for $5 million, and I'll sign your little NDA. $5 million, Dante repeated, his voice devoid of emotion. For pain and suffering, Higgins piped up, loosening his tie. And emotional distress. My client has PTSD. She can't even look at an airplane without crying. Is that so? Charles asked from beside Dante. He placed a video camera on the table. This deposition is being recorded. Ms. Gould, you understand that lying under oath is perjury, a felony punishable by up to 5 years in prison? Tiffany rolled her eyes. "I know the law. Ask your questions." The deposition began. For 2 hours, Tiffany spun her web. She detailed how Dante had glared at her, how he had raised his voice, how the senator had been terrified of him. She claimed she had never had a complaint against her in 10 years of flying. She claimed she was a model employee. "I am a professional," she declared, looking straight into the camera. "I treat everyone with respect. I have never used my position to intimidate anyone. I have never lied for financial gain." Dante glanced at Charles. It was time. "Ms. Gould," Dante said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "Do you recognize this man?" Tiffany looked at the photo. Her face twitched. "It was the pilot from her old airline. I might have flown with him. I don't remember. His name is Captain Rogers," Dante said. "He submitted a sworn affidavit this morning. He details how you fabricated a harassment claim against him because he rejected your advances. He says you told him, quote, 'I can ruin you with one word.' Who are they going to believe, a crying woman or an arrogant pilot?" Tiffany's face went pale. "That's a lie. He's a liar. Is he?" Dante slid another document. "This is the settlement agreement you signed. You took $50,000. You admitted no wrongdoing, but the airline's internal report, which we acquired, states you were caught on the cockpit voice recorder, admitting it was a setup." Higgins, her lawyer, stopped sweating and went very still. He looked at his client. "Tiffany, you didn't tell me about this. It's irrelevant." Tiffany shrieked. "That was years ago. It has nothing to do with you assaulting me. I didn't assault you," Dante said quietly. "And neither did the passenger on Flight 802 last year, or the gate agent in Miami 3 months ago." He dropped a thick stack of files on the table with a heavy thud. "These are complaints, Tiffany. Dozens of them. Passengers you screamed at. Staff you bullied. People you moved out of first class so your friends could have upgrades. You've been running that cabin like a personal fiefdom for years." Tiffany stood up, her hands shaking. "This is a witch hunt. You hacked my files. I'm leaving." "Sit down," Dante said. The command wasn't loud, but it carried so much weight that Tiffany instinctively dropped back into her chair. "We're not done," Dante said. "You claimed Senator Holloway supported your version of events. You claimed on national television that he was scared of me." Dante pressed a button on the remote. The large screen on the wall flickered to life. It was a video message from Senator Holloway. He looked sober serious and very apologetic. "I would like to correct the record regarding the incident on Vanguard Flight 402, the senator said. "Mr. Sterling was perfectly behaved. Ms. Gould was aggressive, rude, and unhinged. She initiated the confrontation. I felt unsafe not because of the passenger, but because of the flight attendant. I fully support the prosecution of Ms. Gould." The video ended. The silence in the room was absolute. Tiffany looked around, her eyes wide and frantic. Her narrative was crumbling. The people weren't here to save her. You bribed him," she hissed. And finally Dante said, ignoring her, "There is the matter of the phone call." "What phone call?" Higgins asked weakly. "The call Ms. Gould made 10 minutes before the deposition started," Dante said. "From the lobby. To her boyfriend." Tiffany froze. "You called a man named Greg." Dante continued. "You told him, quote, 'We're going to get paid, baby. These rich idiots are scared. I put on the waterworks and they'll fold. I didn't even get hurt, but I'm going to limp when I walk out, just in case.'" Tiffany gasped. You tapped my phone." "That's illegal. We didn't tap your phone," Charles corrected smoothly. "You were standing in the lobby of our building. The security cameras have high-fidelity microphones. You consented to audio recording when you signed in at the front desk. It's in the fine print." Right here. Charles pointed to the visitor badge sticker, peeling off Tiffany's lapel. Dante leaned forward, locking eyes with her. You committed perjury, Tiffany. You committed fraud. You filed a false police report. And you tried to destroy my reputation to make a quick buck. Dante stood up and buttoned his jacket. I'm not paying you $5 million. I'm not paying you $5. But I am going to release all of this, the pilot's affidavit, the senator's confession, and the lobby tape to the press in exactly... He checked his watch. 5 minutes. Tiffany slumped in her chair. The David mask fell away, revealing the petty, frightened bully underneath. Please, she whispered. Please don't. It will ruin me. You ruined yourself, Dante said, walking toward the door. You slapped the face of the one person who could afford to hit back. You wanted to be famous? Tiffany, congratulations. You're about to be the most famous liar in America. He opened the door. 2 police officers were waiting in the hallway. Officers, Dante said, stepping aside. She's all yours. The charge is perjury and attempted extortion. As the officers entered the room, Tiffany screamed. It wasn't a scream of fear anymore. It was the scream of someone who realized the game was over and she had lost everything. The downfall of Tiffany Gould was faster and more brutal than her rise. When the police led her out of the Sterling Vance and Associates building, the paparazzi were waiting. Ironically, they were there because Tiffany herself had tipped them off, expecting to walk out triumphant with a settlement check in hand. Instead, the cameras flashed blindingly as she was guided into the back of a squad car, her face a mask of mascara-streaked horror. Within minutes of her arrest, Dante kept his promise. The Sterling files dropped. The internet, which had been so quick to crown her a martyr, was even quicker to destroy her. The audio from the lobby where she bragged about faking her trauma went viral instantly. The affidavit from Captain Rogers painted a picture of a serial manipulator. The video of Senator Holloway apologizing for his silence was the final nail in the coffin. The hashtag Justice for Tiffany vanished, replaced by hashtag Tiffany, the fraud, and hashtag grounded. The GoFundMe page she had set up was frozen for violating terms of service regarding criminal activity, and the thousands of dollars she thought she had secured disappeared into the ether. But the real karma wasn't just online. It was in the courtroom. 6 months later, Dante sat in the back of the Suffolk County Superior Court. He didn't need to be there, but he wanted to see it through. Tiffany stood before the judge. She looked older, harder. The soft cardigans were gone, replaced by a cheap, ill-fitting orange jumpsuit. Her lawyer Higgins had dropped her the moment the check bounced, leaving her with a weary public defender who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Ms. Gould, the judge said, peering over his spectacles, you have pleaded guilty to perjury, filing a false police report, and attempted extortion. Your actions cost an airline millions, wasted police resources, and attempted to ruin the reputation of an innocent man. Tiffany looked back at the gallery. She saw Dante. For a second, her eyes pleaded with him. Help me. You have so much you can spare me. Dante met her gaze with zero sympathy. He gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod, a goodbye. I sentence you to 18 months in state prison. The judge declared, the gavel banging down like a gunshot, followed by 3 years of probation. And you are hereby placed on the federal no-fly list. You will never set foot on an aircraft in the United States again. Tiffany slumped against the table, sobbing. The one place where she had felt powerful, the sky was now forbidden to her forever. A year later, the scene at Vanguard Airlines had changed completely. The culture of entitlement was gone. In the first-class cabin of a flight to Tokyo, Sarah, the timid junior attendant who had tried to warn Tiffany, was now the in-flight service director. She wore a new uniform, one she had helped design, and walked with a confidence she had never possessed before. She stopped at seat 1A. "Mr. Sterling." Sarah smiled warmly. "Champagne." Dante looked up from his book. He smiled back. "Water is fine, Sarah. How is the new training program going?" "It's wonderful," she said. "We treat everyone with respect now. No more trash in hoodies." Dante nodded. "Good. My father is very pleased with your quarterly reports. You're running a tight ship." "Thank you, sir." Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away, on the outskirts of Newark, New Jersey, the rain was pouring down on a grimy roadside diner called Big Al's Truck Stop. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The smell of grease was overwhelming. "Hey, waitress," a burly trucker shouted from booth 4, slamming his coffee mug down. "This coffee is cold, and where's my pie? I've been waiting 10 minutes. A woman in a stained pink uniform hurried over. Her hair was frizzy, her face lined with exhaustion. She kept her head down, trying to avoid eye contact. "I'm sorry, sir," Tiffany Gould mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot. "I'll get a fresh pot right away." "You better," the trucker sneered. "Or I'm talking to your manager. You're useless." Tiffany flinched. The words echoed in her mind. Useless. Garbage. It was exactly what she had called Dante. She hurried back to the kitchen, her feet aching in cheap shoes. As she scraped leftovers into a trash can, she glanced up at the small television mounted in the corner. It was a news report. Billionaire philanthropist Dante Sterling announces a new scholarship fund for underprivileged youth in aviation aimed at diversifying the skies. On the screen, Dante looked handsome, powerful, and kind. He was soaring. Tiffany looked down at the half-eaten burger in the trash. She was grounded, and she knew with a bitter certainty that would last the rest of her life that she had no one to blame but herself. That is the story of how one moment of arrogance can destroy a life, and how true power doesn't need to scream to be heard. Tiffany learned the hard way that you should never judge a book by its cover, especially when that book is The Art of War, and the reader is the owner of the airline. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and high-flying justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. We drop new dramas every week. Share this video with a friend who hates rude people. Let's spread the karma. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.